2 Kings chapter 21, verse 1, Manasseh was 12 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 55 years. His mother was Hephzibah. Verse 2, he did what was evil in the Lord's sight, following the detestable practices of the pagan nations that the Lord had driven from the land ahead of the Israelites. He rebuilt the pagan shrines his father Hezekiah had destroyed. He constructed altars for Baal and set up an Asherah pole, just as King Ahab of Israel had done. He also bowed before all the powers of the heavens and worshipped them. Verse 4, he built pagan altars in the temple of the Lord, the place where the Lord had said, my name will remain in Jerusalem forever. Verse 5, he built these altars for all the powers of the heavens in both courtyards of the Lord's temple. Manasseh also sacrificed his own son in the fire. He practiced sorcery and divination, and he consulted with mediums and psychics. And I said, that is a bad thing to do. The Bible strictly prohibits that, forbids it. He did much that was evil in the Lord's sight, arousing his anger. Verse 7. Manasseh even made a carved image of Asherah and set it up in the temple. Remember one of the first commandment, you shall not serve any other gods before you. No graven images. So those are in the commandments, guys. Manasseh even made a carved image, remember it said of heaven and earth below, of Asherah, and set it up in the temple, the very place where the Lord had told David and his son Solomon, my name will be honored forever in this temple and in Jerusalem, the city I have chosen from among all the tribes of Israel. Verse 8, if the Israelites will be careful to obey my commands, all the laws my servant Moses gave them, I will not send them into exile from this land that I gave their ancestors. But, verse 9, the people refused to listen, and Manasseh led them to do even more evil than the pagan nations that the Lord had destroyed when the people of Israel entered the land. So this is Manasseh's idolatry denounced. Moving on, we're going to go ahead and get this thing. Actually, I kind of like that. We're going to stick to that. So verse 10, then the Lord said through his servants, the prophets, verse 11, King Manasseh of Judah has done many detestable things. He is even more wicked than the Amorites who lived in this land before Israel. He has caused the people of Judah to sin with his idols. Verse 12. Here we go. We got this. So this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. I will bring such disaster on Jerusalem and Judah that the ears of those who hear about it will tingle with horror. Verse 13. I will judge Jerusalem by the same standard I used for Samaria and the same measure I used for the family of Ahab. I will wipe away the people of Jerusalem as one wipes a dish and turns it upside down. Wow, that's powerful. Verse 14, then I will reject even the remnant of my own people who are left, and I will hand them over as plunder for their enemies. 4, verse 15, for they have done great evil in my sight and have angered me even since their ancestors came out of Egypt. We wrote about that in the book of Exodus. Verse 16, Manasseh also murdered many innocent people until Jerusalem was filled from one end to the other with innocent blood. This was in addition to the sin that he caused the people of Judah to commit, leading them to do evil in the Lord's sight. Verse 17, the rest of the events in Manasseh's reign and everything he did are recorded in the book of the history of the kings of Judah. That's a book we need to look for, guys. We've been reading about this over and over. Verse 18, when Manasseh died, he was buried in the palace garden, the garden of Uzzah. Then his son Amon became the next king. Verse 19, Amon was 22 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 2 years. His mother was Meshulameth, the daughter of Haruz from Jotbah. He did what was evil in the Lord's sight, just as his father Manasseh had done. See, it's generational curses, guys. This follows us. He followed the example of his father, what do you know, worshiping the same idols his father had worshipped. He abandoned the Lord, the God of his ancestors, and he refused to follow the Lord's ways. Verse 23, then Ammon's own officials conspired against him and assassinated him in his palace. But the people of the land killed all those who had conspired against King Ammon. All those who had conspired against King Ammon, and they made his son Josiah the next king. The rest of the events in Ammon's reign and what he did are recorded in the book of history of the kings of Judah. Verse 26, he was buried in his tomb in the garden of Uzzah. Then his son Josiah became the next king. Chapter 22. Moving on. Josiah was 8 years old when he became king. Listen, did you hear that? 8. Josiah was 8, not 18. Josiah was 8 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 31 years. Young guy, but he was a long-running king. Well, that's pretty impressive. His mother was Jedidiah, the daughter of Adiah from Bozkath. Verse 2, he did what was pleasing in the Lord's sight and followed the example of his ancestor David. Notice, one followed David, one followed the last dad. One followed David, one followed the last dad. One was a generational curse, it seemed like, and the other followed the law, followed David. So verse 22, I'll read it again. He did what was pleasing in the Lord's sight and followed the example of his ancestor, not his dad, but his ancestor further back, David. So he went back to where it was good. He did not turn away from doing what was right. In the 18th year of his reign, King Josiah sent Shaphan, son of Azaliah and grandson of Meshullam, the court secretary, to the temple of the Lord. He told him, go to Hilkiah, the high priest, and have him count the money the gatekeepers have collected from the people at the Lord's temple. Verse 5, and trust this money to the men assigned to supervise the restoration of the Lord's temple. Then they can use it to pay workers to repair the temple. Verse 6, they will need to hire carpenters, builders, and masons. Also have them buy the timber, the finished stone needed to repair the temple. Verse 7, but don't require the construction supervisors to keep account of the money they receive, for they are honest and trustworthy men. Do you see that? Verse 8, Hilkiah, the high priest, said to Shaphan, the court secretary, I have found the book of the law in the Lord's temple. Then Hilkiah gave the scroll to Shaphan, and he read it. Shaphan went to the king and reported, your officials have turned over the money collected at the temple of the Lord to the workers and supervisors at the temple. Shaphan also told the king, Hilkiah the priest has given me a scroll. So Shaphan read it to the king. When the king heard that, what was written in the book of the law, he tore his clothes in despair. Then he gave these orders to Hilkiah the priest, Ahikam, son of Shaphan, Akbor, son of Micaiah, Shaphan, the court secretary, and Asaiah, the king's personal advisor, go to the temple and speak to the Lord for me, and for the people, and for all Judah. Inquire about the words written in this scroll that has been found. You guys need to parallel this to the book of Revelation. This is parallel. It's prophecy. For the Lord's great anger is burning against us because our ancestors have not obeyed the words of this scroll. Remember that Old Testament? Remember the Torah? We have not been doing everything it says we must do. Verse 14. So Hilkiah the priest, Ahikam, Akbor, Shaphan, and Asaiah went to the new quarter of Jerusalem to consult with the prophet Huldah. She was the wife of Shallum, son of Tikvah, son of Harhas, the keeper of the temple wardrobe. Verse 15, she said to them, the Lord, the God of Israel, has spoken. Go back and tell the man who sent you. This is what the Lord says. Go back and tell the man who sent you, this is what the Lord says. I'm going to bring disaster on this city and its people. All the words written in the scroll that the king of Judah has read will come true. For my people have abandoned me and offered sacrifices to pagan gods, and I am very angry with them for everything they've done. My anger will burn against this place, and it will not be quenched. Verse 18, but go to the king of Judah who sent you to seek the Lord and tell him, this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says concerning the message you have just heard. You were sorry and humbled yourself before the Lord when you heard what I said against this city and its people, that this land would be cursed and become desolate. Think of the abomination of desolation, future prophecy. Just saying. You tore your clothing in despair and wept before me in repentance, and I have indeed heard you, says the Lord. So I will not send the promised disaster until after you have died. We heard about this in previous verses in the Bible. And been buried in peace. You will not see the disaster I'm going to bring on this city. So they took her message back to the king. Chapter 23. We all good? Give me a sound check. Okay. 2 Kings chapter 23, verse 1. Then the king summoned all the elders of Judah and Jerusalem, verse 2. And the king went up to the temple of the Lord, capital Yahweh, with all the people of Judah and Jerusalem, along with the priests and the prophets, all the people from the least to the greatest. There, the king read to them the entire book of the covenant that had been found in the Lord's temple. The king took his place of authority beside the pillar and renewed the covenant in the Lord's presence. He pledged to obey the Lord by keeping all his commandments, laws, and decrees with all his heart and soul. In this way, he confirmed all the terms of the covenant that were written in the scroll, and all the people pledged themselves to the covenant. Verse 4, Then the king instructed Hilkiah, the high priest, and the priests of the second rank, and the temple gatekeepers to remove from the Lord's temple all the articles that were used to worship Baal, Asherah, and all the powers of the heavens. The king had all these things buried outside Jerusalem on the terraces of the Kidron Valley, and he carried the ashes away to Bethel. Verse 5, He did away with the idolatrous priests who had been appointed by the previous kings of Judah. See, man, he did a refresher. Clean house. Who had been appointed by the previous kings of Judah. For they offered sacrifices at the pagan shrines throughout Judah, and even in the vicinity of Jerusalem. They had also offered sacrifices to Baal and to the sun, the moon, the constellations. We have this thing called astronomy, but people have turned it into astrology. So he did away with the idolatrous priests. Excuse me. I'll skip forward. They had also offered sacrifices to Baal and to the sun, the moon, the constellations, and to all the powers of the heavens. Verse 6. The king removed the Asherah pole from the Lord's temple and took it outside Jerusalem to the Kidron Valley, where he burned it. Then he ground the ashes of the pole to dust and threw the dust over the graves of the people. Verse 7, He also tore down the living quarters of the male and female shrine prostitutes that were inside the temple of the Lord, where the women wove coverings for the Asherah pole. Verse 8, Josiah brought to Jerusalem all the priests who were living in other towns of Judah. He also defiled the pagan shrines where they had offered sacrifices all the way from Geba to Beersheba. He destroyed the shrines at the entrance to the gate of Joshua, the governor of Jerusalem. The governor of Jerusalem. This gate was located to the left of the city gate as one enters the city. Verse 9, the priests who had served at the pagan shrines were not allowed to serve at the Lord's altar in Jerusalem, but they were allowed to eat unleavened bread with other priests. That's without sin. So he didn't put them in leadership, but they could serve in the church. That goes to nowadays church, if you think about it. So they were allowed to eat unleavened bread. In other words, eat with everybody and break bread with other priests. So verse 10. Then the king defiled the altar of Topheth in the valley of Ben Hinnom. So no one could ever again use it to sacrifice a son or daughter in the fire as an offering to Moloch. Verse 11, he removed from the entrance of the Lord's temple the horse statues that the former kings of Judah had dedicated to the sun. They were near the quarters of Nathan Melech, the eunuch, an officer of the court. The king also burned the chariots dedicated to the sun. Verse 12, Josiah tore down the altars that the kings of Judah had built on the palace roof above the upper room at Ahaz. The king destroyed the altars that Manasseh had built in the two courtyards of the Lord's temple. He smashed them to bits and scattered the pieces in the Kidron Valley. Verse 13. The king also desecrated the pagan shrines east of Jerusalem to the south of the Mount of Corruption, where King Solomon of Israel had built shrines for Azeroth. That's right, they were. The detestable goddess of the Sidonians, and for Chemosh, the detestable god of the Moabites, and for Moloch, the vile god of the Ammonites. I love how they all had prefixes. I love that. He smashed the sacred pillars and cut down the Asherah poles. Then he desecrated these places by scattering human bones over them. Verse 15, the king also tore down the altar at Bethel, the pagan shrine that Jeroboam, son of Nebat, had made when he caused Israel to sin. It's one thing to sin, like Saul became Paul, but in the book of Acts, Saul actually caused them to sin. He caused them to commit blasphemy. Think about that. He burned down the shrine. And ground it to dust, and he burned the Asherah pole. Verse 16, then Josiah turned around and noticed several tombs in the side of the hill. He ordered that the bones be brought out, and he burned them on the altar at Bethel to desecrate it. This happened just as the Lord had promised through the man of God when Jeroboam stood beside the altar at the festival. You know, Isaiah, who was it? Isaiah? Elisha or Elijah was called the man of God as well. So I think that might be him. I'm not sure. Let's see. This happened as the Lord promised to the man of God, the man of God, who normally is what he's called. When Jeroboam stood beside the altar at the festival, then Josiah turned and looked up at the tomb of the man of God who had predicted these things. Verse 17, what is that monument over there? Josiah asked. And the people of the town told him, it is the tomb of the man of God who came from Judah and predicted the very things that you have just done to the altar of Bethel. Can you imagine that? My goodness. Verse 18, Josiah replied, leave it alone. Don't disturb his bones. So they did not burn his bones or those of the old prophet from Samaria. You guys need to think about who this is. There were certain people that weren't recorded as dying, but I think those certain people come back during the tribulation. Do a little math here. This is very interesting. Verse 19, then Josiah demolished all the buildings of the pagan shrines in the towns of Samaria, just as he had done at Bethel. They had been built by the various kings of Israel and had made the Lord very angry. Verse 20, he executed the priests of the pagan shrines on their own altars, and he burned human bones on the altars to desecrate them. Finally, he returned to Jerusalem. King Josiah then issued this order to all the people. You must celebrate the Passover to the Lord your God as required in this book of the covenant. There had not been a Passover celebration like that since the time when the judges ruled in Israel, nor throughout all the years of the kings of Israel and Judah. 2 Kings chapter 23, verse 23. But in the 18th year of King Josiah's reign, this Passover was celebrated to the Lord in Jerusalem. Okay. I'll start that over. Verse 23. But in the 18th year of King Josiah's reign, this Passover was celebrated to the Lord in Jerusalem. Verse 24. Josiah also got rid of the mediums and psychics, that's what I'm talking about, the household gods, the idols, and every other kind of detestable practice, both in Jerusalem and throughout the land of Judah. He did this in obedience to the laws written in the scroll that Hilkiah the priest had found in the Lord's temple. Verse 25. Never before had there been a king like Josiah who turned to the Lord with all his heart and soul and strength, obeying all the laws of Moses, and there has never been a king like him since. See, that's how you end generational curses. I like that. Verse 26. Even so, the Lord was very angry with Judah because of all the wicked things that Manasseh had done to provoke him. For the Lord said, I will also banish Judah from my presence just as I have banished Israel. And I will reject my chosen city of Jerusalem and the temple where my name was to be honored. Okay, verse 28. The rest of the events of Josiah's reign and all his deeds are recorded in the book of the history of the kings of Judah. Verse 29. While Josiah was king, Pharaoh Necho, king of Egypt, went to the Euphrates River to help the king of Assyria. King Josiah and his army marched out to fight him, but King Necho killed him when they met at Megiddo. Verse 30. Josiah's officers took his body back in a chariot from Megiddo to Jerusalem and buried him in his own tomb. Then the people of the land anointed Josiah's son Jehoaz and made him the next king. Verse 31. Jehoaz was Jehoaz, or whatever you want to call it, was 23 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 3 months. His mother was Humatal, the daughter of Jeremiah from Libnah. Verse 32, he did what was evil in the Lord's sight, just as his ancestors had done. Pharaoh, verse 33, Pharaoh Necho put Jehoaz in prison at Riblah in the land of Hamath to prevent him from ruling in Jerusalem. He also demanded that Judah pay 7,500 pounds of silver and 75 pounds of gold as tribute. I think that was the same way to the 7-branch candlestick. We heard about these 75 pounds previously. Verse 34, Pharaoh Necho then installed Eliakim, another of Josiah's sons, to reign in place of his father, and he changed Eliakim's name to Jehoiakim. Jehoaz was taken to Egypt as a prisoner, where he died. Verse 35, in order to get the silver and gold demanded as a tribute by Pharaoh Necho, Jehoiakim collected a tax from the people of Judah, requiring them to pay in proportion to their wealth. Verse 36, Jehoiakim was 25 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 11 years. His mother was Zebidah, the daughter of Pedaiah from Rumah. Verse 37, he did what was evil in the Lord's sight, just as his ancestors had done. Chapter 24, verse 1. 2 Kings chapter 24, verse 1. During Jehoiakim's reign, King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon, that's a guy we recognize, Nebuchadnezzar, you know that name. During Joachim's reign, King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon invaded the land of Judah. Now we're getting into more modern times of that century. Jehoiakim surrendered and paid him tribute for 3 years, but then rebelled. Verse 2. Then the Lord sent bands of Babylon. Then the Lord sent bands of Babylonian, Aramean, Moabite, and Ammonite raiders against Judah to destroy it, just as the Lord had promised through his prophets. These disasters happened to Judah because of the Lord's command. He had decided to banish Judah from his presence because of the many sins of Manasseh, verse 4, who had filled Jerusalem with innocent blood. The Lord would not forgive this, verse 5. The rest of the events in Jehoiakim's reign and all his deeds are recorded in the book of the history of the kings of Judah. Verse 6, when Jehoiakim died, his son Jehoiakim, Jehoiakim, his son Jehoiakim became the next king. Verse 7, the king of Egypt did not venture out of his country after that, for the king of Babylon captured the entire area formerly claimed by Egypt, from the brook of Egypt to the Euphrates River. Jehoiakim reigns in Judah. Verse 8, Jehoiakim did what was evil in the Lord's sight, just as his father had done. See, notice some people do what their fathers did, and they carry on the bad habits. Don't get rid of the idols. But other generations follow all the way back to their ancestors, David. And it keeps saying the ones that followed David. Then there was the ones that just followed what they heard from the last group of people. You see what I mean? Which group do you set in? Verse 9, Jehoiakim did what was evil in the Lord's sight, just as his father had done. Jerusalem captured. Verse 10. During Jehoiakim's reign, the officers of King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon came up against Jerusalem and besieged it. Nebuchadnezzar himself arrived at the city during the siege. Verse 12. Then King Jehoiakim, along with the queen mother, his advisors, his commanders, and his officials, surrendered to the Babylonians. And his officials, in the 8th year of Nebuchadnezzar's reign, he took Jehoiakim prisoner. As the Lord had said beforehand, Nebuchadnezzar carried away all the treasures from the Lord's temple and the royal palace. He stripped away all the gold objects that King Solomon of Israel had placed in the temple. Oh boy, he wanted to be the new king. King Nebuchadnezzar took all the Jerusalem captive, including all the commanders and the best of the soldiers. See that? He wanted to not only be king, but he wanted to treat it as though they never served anybody else. He wanted to be in full control. He even wanted to erase the history of somebody else having control. This is a nasty king. We'll find out something crazy happens to him. So he took all of Jerusalem captive. This we're going to hear about Daniel coming up, including all the commanders and the best of the soldiers, craftsmen, and artisans, 10,000 in all. Only the poorest people were left in the land. Verse 15, Nebuchadnezzar led King Joachim away as a captive to Babylon, along with the queen mother, his wives and officials, and all Jerusalem's elite. Verse 16, he also exiled, in other words, sent them out, right? 7,000 of the best troops and 1,000 craftsmen and artisans, all of whom were strong and fit for war. Verse 17, then the king of Babylon installed Mattaniah. How do you say that? That's right. Then the king of Babylon installed Mattaniah, Joachim's uncle, as the next king, and he changed Mattaniah's name to Zedekiah. Zedekiah reigns in Judah. Verse 18, Zedekiah was 21 years old when he became king. Lots of young kings, you guys. And he reigned in Jerusalem 11 years. His mother was Hamutal, the daughter of Jeremiah from Libnah. Remember, there was an 8-year-old king that reigned like almost 30 years. An 8-year-old. The young king, he seems to last longer. Maybe younger values, I guess. Anyway, verse 19. But Zedekiah did what was evil in the Lord's sight, just as Joachim had done. See that? Following their ancestors, or rather than their ancestors, following the last leader. Not a good idea. You need to go back to the truth instead of listening to everybody else. Excuse me. Verse 19, but Zedekiah did what was evil in the Lord's sight, just as Jehoiakim had done. Verse 20, these things happened because of the Lord's anger against the people of Jerusalem and Judah until he finally banished them from from his presence and sent them into exile. Zedekiah rebelled against the king of Babylon, chapter 25. So this is the fall and captivity of Judah. We're getting into like some cool stuff when we get to Daniel, you guys. I can't wait. 2 Kings chapter 25, verse 1. And this should be our, we're getting close to the end here. Not the whole Bible, but first third of the Bible. So verse 1. So on January 15th, during the 9th year of Zedekiah's reign, King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon led his entire army against Jerusalem. They surrounded the city and built siege ramps against its walls. Jerusalem was kept under siege until the 11th year of King Zedekiah's reign. Verse 3, by July 18th, in the 11th year of Zedekiah's reign, the famine in the city had become very severe, and the last of the food was entirely gone. Verse 4, then a section of the city wall was broken down. Since the city was surrounded by the Babylonians, the soldiers waited for nightfall and escaped through the gate between the two walls behind the king's garden. Then they headed toward the Jordan Valley. But, verse 5, the Babylonian troops chased the king and overtook him on the plains of Jericho, for his men had all deserted him and scattered. I've experienced that. They captured the king and took him to the king of Babylon at Riblah, verse 6, where they pronounced the judgment upon Zedekiah. They made Zedekiah watch as they slaughtered his sons. Man, there's countries that do that today, man. Their watches have slaughtered their children. It's awful. Then they gouged out Zedekiah's eyes, bound him in bronze chains, and led him away to Babylon. There are people today that try to replicate some of these stories on earth today doing these very things. 2 Kings chapter 25, verse 8. On August 14th of that year, which was the 19th year of King Nebuchadnezzar's reign, August 14th, 19th year of his reign, Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard and an official of the Babylon king, arrived in Jerusalem. Verse 9. He burned down the temple of the Lord, the royal palace, and all the houses of Jerusalem. He destroyed all the important buildings in the city. Then, verse 10, he supervised the entire Babylonian army as they tore down the walls of Jerusalem on every side. Then Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, took as exiles the rest of the people who remained in the city, the defectors, who had declared their allegiance to the king of Babylon, and the rest of the population. Verse 12. But the captain of the guard allowed some of the poorest people to stay behind to care for the vineyards and fields. The Babylonians broke up the bronze pillars in front of the Lord's temple, the bronze water carts, and the great bronze basin called the sea. And they carried all the bronze away to Babylon. Verse 14. They also took all the ash buckets, shovels, lamp snuffers, ladles, and all the other bronze articles used for making sacrifices at the temple. Verse 15, the captain of the guard also took the incense burners and basins and all the other articles made of pure gold or silver. Verse 16, the weight of the bronze from the two pillars, the sea, and the water carts was too great to be measured. These things had been made for the Lord's temple in the days of Solomon. Verse 17, each of the pillars was 27 feet tall. The bronze capital, the top part, on the top of each pillar was 7.5 feet high and was decorated with a network of bronze pomegranates all the way around. You guys research the study of the tabernacle, this information, and the temple here. There's parallels that are incredible. These numbers, 7.5. There was a brazen altar where there was sacrifices made, and this is saying right here, bronze means judged. So each of the pillars were 27 feet tall. That's very significant. The bronze, or the judged capital, or the top, on the top of each pillar was 7.5 feet high. That's the same measurement as the brazen altar was wide, and was decorated with a network of bronze, meaning judgment, pomegranates. There's significance, you guys. Circle this all the way around. Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, took with him as prisoners Sariah, the high priest, Zephaniah, the priest of the second rank, and the 3 chief gatekeepers. Verse 19, and from among the people still holding the city, he took an officer who had been in charge of the Judean army, 5 of the king's personal advisors, the army commander's chief secretary, who was in charge of the recruitment, and 60 other citizens. This is amazing, guys. Verse 20, Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, took them all to the king of Babylon at Riblah. Verse 21, and there at Riblah in the land of Hamath, the king of Babylon had them all put to death. So the people of Judah were sent into exile from their land. This is where it all starts. Verse 22. Then King Nebuchadnezzar appointed Gedaliah, son of Achim, or Gedaliah, son of Ahikam, and grandson of Shaphan, and governor over the people he had left in Judah. Verse 23, when all the army commanders and their men learned that the king of Babylon had appointed Gedaliah as governor, they went to see him at Mitzpah. Reminds me of Bar Mitzvah, son of the law. These included Jezaniah, son of Makathite, and all their men. Gedaliah vowed to them that the Babylonian officials meant them no harm. Don't be afraid of them. Live in the land and serve the king of Babylon, and all will go well for you, he promised. Well, we find out somebody doesn't want to listen to all the rules because they're not godly. Verse 25, but in the mid-autumn of that year, Ishmael, son of Nethaniah and grandson of Elishama, who was a member of the royal family, went to Mitzpah with 10 men, that's completion, that number of fulfillment, and killed Gedaliah. He also killed all the Judeans and Babylonians who were with him at Mitzpah. Verse 26, then all the people of Judah, from the least to the greatest, as well as the army commanders, fled in panic to Egypt, for they were afraid of what the Babylonians would do to them. In the 37th year of the exile of King Jehoiakim of Judah, evil Merodach ascended to the Babylonian throne. He was kind to Jehoiakim, and released him from prison on April 2 of that year. Verse 28, he spoke kindly to Jehoiakim and gave him a higher place than all the other exiled kings in Babylon. Remember this happened remember Joseph was brought to become second in charge under Pharaoh. He spoke kindly to Jehoiakim and gave him a higher place than all the other exiled kings of Babylon. Verse 29, he supplied Jehoiakim with new clothes to replace his prison garb and allowed him to dine in the king's presence for the rest of his life. Verse 30, chapter 25, verse 30. So the king gave him a regular food allowance as long as he lived. And that's the completion of chapter 25. So that closes out 1st and 2nd Kings. So tonight we're going to start up 1st Chronicles chapters 1 through 5. So let's go to 1st Chronicles, guys. 1st Chronicles chapter 1. Man, we're moving through the Old Testament. 1st Chronicles chapter 1. Now we're going to get into some newer stuff. This is really interesting, you guys. Pay close attention because we learned some of these names in Genesis 5. These, Adam begot Seth, Seth begot Enoch. We learned these genealogical genealogies. There's many other people we didn't hear about, I'm sure, but this is what would lead us to the Son, to Jesus. So we get these genealogies for a reason. So this is from Adam to Abraham. Okay? Adam to Abraham. First, remember before we did we went from 1 through 10, Adam through Noah. But now we're doing from Adam to Abraham. So now we're looking, so it's going to go back in 1 Chronicles chapter 1, verse 1. We're going to get a quick oversight. Remember the Genesis 5 was a breakdown of all the things from Adam up. Now this is going to generalize from Adam and move all the way up to Abraham, right? You follow me? So that's what this says. 1 Chronicles chapter 1, verse 1. The descendants of Adam were Seth. Remember Adam, Seth, Enoch. But he's going to skip ahead. You'll see this. The descendants of Adam were Seth, Enosh, Canaan, Mahalalel, Jared, Enoch, Methuselah, Lamech, and Noah. The sons of Noah were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And if you guys go back and study Genesis 5, we talked about something. These genealogies, the 10 people listed, the 10 families, men listed before the Noah's flood, it actually tells you a story. Adam means man. Seth was appointed to take over after Cain killed Abel, the next son they had. His name and appointed. So man appointed. And if you read those 10 things, man appointed something all the way down to comfort, and rest. So those 10 genealogies aren't just boring genealogies. They actually bring you the story of Jesus. So here we go. So, 1 Chronicles chapter 1, verse 1. The descendants of Adam were Seth, Enosh, Canaan, Mahalalel, Jared, Enoch, Methuselah, 969 years old. He was the oldest one in the Bible. Jared, Enoch, Methuselah, Lamech, and Noah. The sons of Noah were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. The descendants of Japheth were Gomer. Now we're going to skip ahead to further ones. Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshech, and Tiras. Verse 6. So, I'm sorry to do this again. Exodus talked about, remember the camps, numbers, the numbers of people in the camp, the genealogies in Genesis, the kings. We heard about the judges. So these first 5 or 6 books outline all these numbers, genealogies, and place sets. That's amazing. I mean, literally everything's in the Bible. So 1 Chronicles chapter 1, verse 6, the descendants of Gomer were Achanez, Riphath, and Togarmah. Verse 7, the descendants of Javan were Elisha, Tarshish. We heard about that with Jonah and the whale. Katim and Rodanim. Verse 8, the descendants of Ham were Cush, Mizraim, Put, and Canaan. Verse 9, the descendants of Cush were Seba, Havilah, Septah, Ramah, and Septeka. The descendants of Ramah were Sheba and Dedan. Verse 10, Cush is an area now that has a new name that's one of the Islamic countries that are the Bible talks about in Ezekiel 38. You need to research Cush. There's a lot of stuff goes. Read Ezekiel 38, man. You'll read about prophecy about Iran and all this other stuff going on. 1 Chronicles chapter 1, verse 10. Cush was also the ancestor of Nimrod. Remember Nimrod? Who was the first heroic warrior on earth. And we get that name. You're a Nimrod from Nimrod. Mizraim, Cain, Tubal Cain, the Canaanites once again. Yep, you're right. Absolutely. Mizraim was the ancestor of the Ludites, Anamites, Lehabites, and Nephtuhites. Verse 12, Pathrazites, Chalcihites, and the Caphatrites, and the Caphtorites, from whom the Philistines came. Verse 13, Canaan's oldest son was Sidon, the ancestor of the Sidonians. Canaan was also the ancestor of the Hittites, Jebusites, Amorites, Girgashites, Hivitites, Archites, Sinites, Arvadites, Samarites, and Hamathatites. The descendants of Shem were Elam, Asphur, Arphaxad, Lud, and Aram. The descendants of Aram were Uz, remember where Abraham came from, Hul, Gaither, and Mosh. Verse 18. Arphaxad was the father of Shelah, parasites. Shelah was the father of Aber. Aber had 2 sons, verse 19. The first was named Peleg, which means division, for during his lifetime the people of the world were divided into different language groups. Remember the Tower of Babel? His brother's name was Joktan. First Chronicles chapter 1, verse 20. Joktan was the ancestor of Almadad, Sheleph, Hazarmaveth, Zerah, Hadaram, Uzal, Dikla, Obal, Abamiel, Sheba, Ophir, Havilah, and Jobab. All these were descendants of Joktan. Big family. Verse 24. So this is the family line descended from Shem, Arphaxad, Shelah, Aber, Peleg, Reu, Serug, Nahor, Terah, and Abram, later known as Abraham. Abram when he had the breath of God put into him, he added a hey. His name was Abram. When he became in covenant, he called him Abraham. Sarai became Sarah. And I want you guys to take note here that Abram means father. Well, he was 99 before he had a kid, so it was a joke that he couldn't have kids. Well, sure enough, he gets this new name, Abraham, after having a child, which means the father of many. I think that's ironic and funny. So, moving on, we're going to get these names, these genealogies. They're so important. Do not overlook genealogy. Chronicles is another book that's overlooked because they're like, well, they're just Jewish names. We don't need to know that. Oh, yes, you do. You should go look up these names because you will find a genealogy. You'll find a story within these names, just like you'll find a story in the stars in the book of Job. Something to look into. We'll back up. We'll go up to verse 25. 1 Chronicles 1:25. Aber, Peleg, Reu, Serug, Nahor, Terah, and Abram, later known as Abraham. From Abram, from Abraham to Jacob. Now notice the genealogies are skipping around kind of quick now, bringing us up to date. Verse 28, the sons of Abraham were Isaac and Ishmael. We heard about that story in Genesis very plainly. These are their genealogical records. The sons of Ishmael were Nebaioth, the oldest, Kedar, Adbeel, Mibsam, weird names, Mishma, Dumah, Mesa, Hadad, Tema, Jetur, Naphish, Kedemah. These were the sons of Ishmael. Ishmael, remember the illegitimate son with Hagar that Isaac, Hagar was a illegitimate child with Abraham and Isaac. So the two lineage, you have Isaac and Ishmael. Basically, some people believe that's where we had this whole Palestinian split happen. Weird people, I know, right? So I'll just back it up. Verse 31, 1 Chronicles 1:31. Jetur, Naphish, and Kedemah. These were the sons of Ishmael. The sons of Keturah, Abraham's concubine, were Zimran, Jokshan, Medan, Midian, Ishbak, and Shua. The sons of Jokshan were Sheba and Dedan. You know Sheba, the queen of Sheba. You've heard that. The sons of Midian were Ephah, Aphor, Hanok, Abida, and Eldah. All these were descendants of Abraham through his concubine Keturah. Verse 34. Abraham was the father of Isaac. The sons of Isaac were Esau and Israel. Remember, it was Esau and Jacob, but Jacob got his name changed to Israel. Think about that. There's a nugget there. Circle that. Look it up. Verse 35, the sons of Esau were Eliphaz, Ruel, Joash, Jalem, and Korah. Verse 36, the descendants of Eliphaz were Taman, Omar, Zapho, Gatam, Kenaz, and Amalek, who was born in Timnah. Verse 37, the descendants of Reuel were Nahath, Zerah, Shammah, and Mizah. The descendants of Seir were, notice the names are kind of similar because just like nowadays, we have periods of names where we get these weird different things, like these words like, man, that's Cap. You have these time frames, these 10-year periods where things change, which is really funny when you see all these extra canonical books that are written. They try to act like they're, the book of Mary or the book of Peter so that you believe it. But they're not written during his lifetime or other people's lifetimes. They're not, and you'll notice when you read these canonical books, this just reminds me of this. These canonical books that were found, most of our Greek New Testament there was found in Oxyrhynchus, Egypt. And just like any generation, you have oxymorons and names and nicknames that unless you live in that generation, you won't notice the nuances. So when they found these extra canonical books, among other things, these nuances weren't there. It's almost like the people in Egypt found these and called them a name that were recognized, and they seemed to fill in the stories exactly what was missing from the actual Gospels. And what's weird is all the stuff they write in these apocryphal books tend to have an Egyptian narrative around the area of Oxyrhynchus. That's just one of the many reasons why we reject the apocryphal books. Although some of them are actual books, we have to be careful not to adopt them as canonized, which means the measuring stick by what was put in the Bible. I just wanted to point that out. I haven't done a lot of teaching tonight, but I had a reason for telling you this. When I was reading verse 38, the descendants of Seir were Lodan, Shobal, Zibeon, Anna, Dishan, Azer, and Dishon. I had a reason for telling you guys that. The names. If you notice, these names like Nepha, Shammah, Zerah, and Mizah, they have the Ah. Because these are, when things are handed down, generations tend to repeat names like Amy, John, Karen, Kim. You see what I'm saying? And that's how you can kind of tell different generations. I mean, I think it's one way to tell. I just thought that was a fun little study on Egypt and all that. It just seemed to fit. Anyway, so the descendants of Seir were Lotan, Shobal, Zibeon, Anna, a little nugget for you guys, take it or leave it, Dishan, Azer, and Dishan, excuse me. Verse 39, the descendants of Lotan were Horai, and Hamam, see that, the H-E's. Lotan's sister was named Timnah. The descendants of Shobal were Alvin, Manahath, Abel, Shepo, and Onam. The descendants of Zibeon were Aya and Anna. See that? The names are similar. Verse 41, the son of Anna was Dishan. The descendants of Dishan was Hemdan, Eshban, Ithran, and Karan. The descendants of Azer were Bilhan, Zaban, and Achan. The descendants of Dishan were Uz and Aran. These are the kings who ruled in the land of Edom before any king ruled over the Israelites. Bela, son of Beor, who ruled over his city of from his city of Dinhaba. That's a weird name. Verse 44. When Bela died, Joab, son of Zerah from Bozrah, became king in his place. Moving on. Okay. 1 Chronicles 145. When Jobab died. When Jobab died, Husham from the land of the Temanites, not the termites, became king in his place. I love the Bible. Verse 46. When Husham died, Hadad, son of Bedad, became king in his place and ruled from the city of Avith. He was the one who destroyed the Midianite army in the land of Moab. Remember the washpot. When Hadad died, Samlah from the city of Masrekah became king in his place. When Samlah died, Shaul from the city of Rehoboth on the river became the king in his place. When Shaul died, Baal Hanan, son of Akbar, became king in his place. Verse 50. When Baal Hanan died, Hadad became king in his place and ruled from the city of Pau. His wife was Mehetabel, or Mehetabel. How do you say that? Mehetabel, whatever. The daughter of Matred and granddaughter of Mezahab. Verse 51. Then Hadad died. The clan leaders of Edom were Timnah, Alva, and Japheth. How do you say that? Ohilabama, Allah, Penon, Kenaz, Teman, Mibzar, Magdiel, and Iram. These are the clan leaders of Edom. Strange names, but we had to read through it, guys. It's part of the Bible. Chapter 2. We're making it. This is to be the genealogy of David now, guys. We're in 1 Chronicles chapter 2, verse 1. We're going to go to chapter 5. The sons of Israel were Reuben. Now, this is the tribes we know. They were Reuben, Simeon, Levi. Remember the Levites that carried the tabernacle? Judah, Jesus' tribe, remember? Issachar, Zebulun, Dan, Joseph, Benjamin, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. And we're going to hear these names again. By the way, these 12 tribes, which you're going to hear about, you don't hear Joseph if you notice here. I don't think Joseph's here because his sons, let's see, I forget his sons, Simeon, I can't remember. His son, a couple of his sons took over. Anyway, we're going to hear about these tribes again soon. Okay, verse 3. Judah had 3 sons from Bathshua, a Canaanite woman. Their names were Onan, and Shelah. But the Lord saw that the oldest son, was a wicked man, so he killed him. Later, verse 4, Judah had twin sons from Tamar, his widowed daughter-in-law. Their names were Perez and Zerah. So Judah had 5 sons in all. Verse 5. The sons of Perez were Hezron and Hamuel. The son of Zerah were Zimri, Ethan, Haman, Calcol, and Darda, 5 in all. The son of Carmi, a descendant of Zimri, we'll see the names parallel there, was Achan, who brought disaster on Israel by taking plunder that had been set apart for the Lord. The son of Ethan was Azariah. The sons of Hezron were Jerahmeel, Ram, and Caleb. Maybe that's how Dodge Ram got its name. I don't know. Ram was the father of Amminadab. Amminadab was the father of Nahshon, a leader of Judah. Nahshon was the father of Salmon. Salmon was the father of Boaz. Remember Boaz from the book of Ruth? Her Boaz. Boaz was 1 Chronicles 2:12. Boaz was the father of Obed. Obed was the father of Jesse. Jesse's first son was Eliab. His second was Abinadab. His third was Shemaiah. Verse 14. His fourth was Nathaniel. His fifth was Radai. Verse 15. His sixth was Ozam. And his seventh was David. Verse 16. Their sisters were named Zeruiah and Abigail. Zeruiah had 3 sons named Abishai, Joab, and Ashahel. Verse 17, Abigail married a man named Jether, an Ishmaelite, and they had a son named Amasa. I thought these names were over, but you have to go real deep, but you have to get out of the Old Testament really to get away from these hard names. It's crazy. Verse 18, 1 Chronicles 2:18, Hezron's son Caleb had sons from his wife Azubah, and from Jerioth. You guys thought the names were over, but they're not. Her sons were named Jaser, Yasher, Shobab, and Arden. Verse 19, after Azubah died, Caleb married Ephrathah, Ephrathah, and they had a son named Hur. Hur was the father of Uri. Uri was the father of Bezalel. You got to read, man. You got to learn some names. I'm telling you what. Imagine trying to get these names right if you're getting paid for audio Bible. This is free, you guys. Come on. Verse 20. Hur was the father of Uri. Uri was the father of Bezalel. When Hezron was 60 years old, he married Gilead's sister, the daughter of Machir. They had a son named Segub. Boy. Segub was the father of Jair, who ruled 23 towns in the land of Gilead. But Geshur and Aram captured the towns of Jair and also took Kenath and its 60 surrounding villages. All these were descendants of Machir, the father of Gilead. Soon after Hezron died in the town of Caleb, Ephrathah, his wife Abijah gave birth to a son named Asher, the father of Tekoa. The sons of Jeremiel, the oldest son of Hezron, were Ram, the firstborn, Bunah, Oran, Ozem, and Ahijah. Jeremiel had a second wife named Adarah. Okay, he's remarried again. She was the mother of Onam. The sons of Ram, the oldest son of Jeremiel, were Maaz, Jamin, and Acre. The sons of Onam were Shammai and Jada. The sons of Shammai were Nadab and Abishur. Hey, we had fun for a bit. Now we're getting into these names. We're still having fun. Hey guys, the Bible's awesome. I don't care if you have a hard time with the names or not. Figure them out because there's meaning in the names. God didn't do anything by accident. He didn't. I promise you. Verse 29. We got this. The story is good and bad blood. That's right. Oh yeah, good and bad. Exactly. It's the story of good and bad bloodlines, and God gives you every name outlined. 1 Chronicles 2:29. The sons of Abishur and his wife Abihail were Haban and Molid. The sons of Nadab were Saled and Ephraim. Saled died without children, but Ephraim had a son named Ishi. The son of Ishi was Sheshan. Sheshan had a descendant named Ahlai. The sons of Jada, Shemael's brother, were Jeshur and Jonathan. Jeshur died without children, or Jether. But Jonathan had two sons named Pelah and Zazah. These were all descendants of Jeremiel. Verse 34, Jeshan had no sons, though he did have daughters. He also had an Egyptian servant named Zara. Shazan gave one of his daughters to be the wife of Jarha, and they had a son named Attai. Attai was the father of Nathan the father of Zabad. Zabad was the father of Ephlal. Ephlal was the father of Obed. Can you imagine keeping track of these genealogies, guys? Zabad was the father of Ephlal. Ephlal was the father of Obed. Obed was the father of Jehu we talked about. Jehu was the father of Azariah. Verse 39. Azariah was the father of Halaz, and Halaz was the father of Elasah. Eleasah was the father of Sismai. Sismai was the father of Shalom. Shalom was the father of Jechemiah, or Jechemiah. Jechemiah was the father of Elishama. The descendants of Caleb, the brother of Jeremiel, included Mesha, the firstborn, who became the father of Ziph. Caleb's descendants also included the sons of Marishah, the father of Hebron. Verse 43. The sons of Hebron were Korah, Tapua, Rakim, and Shema. Shema was the father of Raham. Raham was the father of Jorkam. Rakam was the father of Shammai. The son of Shammai was Maon. Maon was the father of Bethzur. Caleb's concubine Ephah gave birth to Haran, Mazah, and Gazez. Haran was the father of Gazez. Okay. The sons of Zadai were Regam, Jotham, Geshan, Pelet, Ephah, and Shaph. Another of Caleb's concubines, Maacah, gave birth to Shaber and Turhana. She also gave birth to Shaph, the father of Madonna, not the Madonna you remember, the singer, and Sheba, the father of Machbenah and Gibeah. Caleb also had a daughter named Ashah. They were all descendants of Caleb, the sons of Hur, the oldest son of Caleb's wife, Ephrathah. Ephrathah were Shobal, the founder of Kiriath Jearim, Salma, the founder of Bethlehem, and Hareph, the founder of Beth Gader. The descendants of Shobal, the founder of Kiriath Jearim, were Haroah, half the Manahathites, Verse 53, and the families of Kiriath Jearim, the Ithrites, Puthites, Shamathites, and Misharites, from whom came the people of Zorah and Eshtoel. Wow. Okay, verse 54. The descendants of Salma were the people of Bethlehem, the Nephathites, Astroth, Beth Joab, the other half of the Manathites, and Zorites. The Zorites, and the families of scribes living at Jabez, the Tirathites, the Shimeathites, and the Sukathites. All these were Kenites who descended from Hamath, the father of the family of Rechab. Chapter 3. Moving on. We have 2 more chapters after 3, so chapter 5 is where we're going to. We having fun yet or what? We are. I just love that blue in the background. That's awesome. Okay. 1 Chronicles chapter 3, verse 1. These are the sons of David. The Chronicles are going to last a while, but we got some names to read. These are the sons of David who were born in Hebron. The oldest was Amnon, whose mother was Ahinoam from Jezreel. Remember we talked about Jezebel and Jezreel. The second was Daniel. We're going to talk about Daniel in depth. Okay, Daniel's 70th week is really amazing. Whose mother was Abigail from Carmel. The third was Absalom. We're going to hear about that more. Whose mother was Maacah, the daughter of Talmai, king of Geshur. The fourth was Adonijah, whose mother was Haggith. The fifth was Shephatiah, whose mother was Abital. The sixth was Ithream, whose mother was Eglah, David's wife. These 6 sons were born to David in Hebron, where he reigned 7.5 years. There's that 7.5 again. Then David reigned another 33 years in Jerusalem. That's funny. David 33. Jesus died at 33. Just saying. Verse 5. Son of David. Interesting. 33. Anyway. The sons born to David in Jerusalem included Shemua, Shobab, Nathan, and Solomon. Their mother was Bathsheba, the daughter of Amiel. David also had 9 other sons, Ibhar, Elishua, Elphalet, Nogah, Nepheg, Zaphia, Elishama, Eliada, and Elphaleh. These were the sons of David, not including his sons born to his concubines. Their sister was named Tamar. The descendants of Solomon. Notice, he tells you he has concubines, but he doesn't list the names. That's interesting. Their sister was named Tamar. Verse 10. The descendants, seems like there's nothing here, but there is, I promise you guys. The descendants of Solomon were Rehoboam, Abijah, Asa, Jehoshaphat. These are names we all recognize. Jehoram, Ahaziah, Joash, Amaziah, Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, Hezekiah, Manasseh, Amon, and Josiah. The sons of Josiah were Johanan, the oldest, Jehoiakim, the second, Zedekiah, the third, and Zoahaz, the fourth. We're getting there, guys. Verse 16. The successors of Joachim were his son Jehoiakim, and his brother Zedekiah. The sons of the sons of Joachim, who was taken prisoner by the Babylonians, were Shealtiel, Malchiram, Pedaiah, Shenazar, Jechemiah, Hoshama, and Nedabiah. Wow. They should have ran out of Bias and Nettas and Zeras and all. I'm surprised they didn't. The sons of Pedadiah were Zerubbabel and Shimei. The sons of Zerubbabel were Meshullam and Hananiah. Their sister was Shelemith. His 5 other sons were Hushabah, Ohel, or Ohel. I didn't write it, man. I'm just saying it's Ohel. Berechiah, Hazadiah, and Jeshab Hased. The sons of Hanadiah were Pelatiah and Jeshiah. Jeshiah's son was Raphiah. Raphiah's son was Arnon. Arnon's son was Obadiah, who we'll read about. This will be one of the small prophets. Obadiah's son was Shechaniah. The descendants of Shechaniah were Shemaiah, and his sons Hattush, Egal, Bariah, Nerariah, and Shephat, 6 in all. Verse 23. The sons of Neriah were Elonai, Hizkiah, and Akrikam, 3 in all. Akrikam, 3 in all. The sons of Elaniah were Hadaviah, Eliashib, Pelaiah, Akub, Jehonan, Deliah, and Anani, 7 in all. Boy, these names just never seem to end, y'all. Come on now. Jesus got a reason, but come on, he got a reason for the season. But these names are difficult. Even if you're Jewish, they're difficult. Descendants of Judah. That's all right. Glory to God. 1 Chronicles chapter 4, verse 1. Moving on. We're doing good. The descendants of Judah were Perez, Hezron, Carmi, Hur, and Shobal. Shobal's son, Uriah, whatever, was the father of Jahath. Jahath was the father of Ahume and Lahad. These were the families of the Zorathites. The descendants of Edom were Jezreel, Ishma, Idbash, their sister Hezalelponi. Wow, Penuel, the father of Gedor, and Azer, the father of Hushah. These were the descendants of Hur, the firstborn of Ephrathah, the ancestor of Bethlehem. Asher, verse 5, the father of Tekoa, had two wives named Helah and Nerah. Nerah gave birth to Achuzam, Hefer, Tamini, and Hahashtari. Helah gave birth to Zereth, Izar, Ethan, and Koz, who became the ancestor of Anab, Zababa, and all the families of Ahurhel, son of Haram. There was a man named Jabez, who was more honorable than any of his brothers. His mother named him Jabez because his birth had been so painful. He was the one who prayed to the God of Israel, "Oh, that you would bless me and expand my territory." Remember that, guys? "Please be with me in all that I do and keep me from all trouble and pain." And God granted him his request. Verse 11, Caleb, the brother of Shehuah, was the father of Mehir. Mehir was the father of Eshton. Eshton was the father of Beth Rapha, Paseah, and Tehanana. Tahana was the father of Ernahash. These were the descendants of Rechah. The sons of Kenaz were Othniel, and Saraiah. Othniel's sons were Hathoth, and Moanotai. Moanotai was the father of Orphra. Saraiah was the father of Joab, the founder of the Valley of Craftsmen, so called because they were craftsmen. Wow, the names only got more difficult. 1 Chronicles chapter 4, verse 15, but we love it. The sons of Caleb, sons of Zephunah, which I know somebody by that name, were Eru, Elah, and Nahum. The son of Elah was Kenaz. Verse 16, the sons of Jehalelel, were Ziphah, Tariah, and Azarel. The sons of Ezra were Zether, Mered, Aphor, and Zalon. One of Mered's wives became the mother of Miriam, Shimei, and Ishbah, the father of Eshtemoa. He married a woman from Judah who became the mother of Jared, the father of Gedor. Haber, the father of Soko, and Jekuthiel, the father of Zanoah. Mered also married Bethia, a daughter of Pharaoh, and she bore him children. Verse 19. Hadiah's wife was a sister of Nahum. We'll read about that more in the Bible. One of her sons was the father of Kala, the Garmite, and another was the father of Eshtemoa, the Machathite. The sons of Shimon were Amnon, Rena, Ben-Hanan, and Tilon. The descendants of Ishi were Zohath and Ben-Zohath. You guys, these names don't play. Shelah was one of Judah's sons. The descendants of Shelah were the father of Lekah, Ladah, the father of Marishah, the families of linen workers at Beth Ashabiah. Zokim, the men of Kaziba, and Joash, and Seraph, who ruled over Moab, and Jeshubi Lehem. These names all come from the ancient records. Verse 23, they were the pottery makers who lived in Netaim and Gedera. They lived there and worked for the king. The sons of Simeon were Jemuel, Jamin, Jerib, Zohar, and Shual. It's funny, that sounds a lot like Shual, which is another name for hell. The descendants of Shual were Shalom, Mibsam, and Mishma. The descendants of Mishma were Hamiel, Zakur, and Shimei. Shimei had 16 sons and 6 daughters, but none of his brothers had large families. So Simeon's tribe never grew as large as the tribe of Judah. They lived in Beersheba, Moladah, Hazurashel, Bilhah, Azaim, Toled, Bethuel, Hormah, Ziklag, Beth Makabath, Hazir Sazim, Beth Biri, and Sharaim. These towns were under their control until the time of King David. That's a rough one, but we got it. Their descendants also lived in Etham, Ain, Rimmon, Token, and Ashen, 5 towns, and their surrounding villages as far away as Baalath. This was their territory, and these names are listed in their genealogical records. Other descendants of Simeon included Mishabab, Zemlech, Joshua, son of Amaziah, Joel, Zesu, or Yehu, son of Joshabiah, son of Seraiah, son of Aziel, Elonai, Zakoba, Jeshohai, Asaiah, Adiel, Yashamil, Benaiah, and Ziza, son of Silphi, son of Elon, son of Jediah, son of Shimri, son of Shemaiah. These were the names of some of the leaders of Simeon's wealthy clans. Their families grew. Some of the names, guys. Some of the names. Verse 39. And they traveled to the region of Gerar in the east part of the valley, seeking pasture land for their flocks. First Chronicles 4:40. They found lush pastures there, and the land was spacious, quiet, and peaceful. Some of Ham's descendants had been living in that region. But during the reign of King Hezekiah of Judah, these leaders of Simeon invaded the region and completely destroyed the homes of the descendants of Ham and the Menites. No trace of them remains today. They killed everyone who lived there and took the land for themselves because they wanted its good pasture land for their flocks. We deal with that today. Verse 42. 500 of these invaders from the tribe of Simeon went to Mount Seir, led by Pelatiah, Neriah, Rephahiah, and Uzziel, all sons of Ishi. They destroyed the few Amalekites who had survived, and they had lived there ever since. Last chapter tonight, chapter 5. And we're going to pick up, obviously, 1 Chronicles chapter 6 tomorrow. So 1 Chronicles chapter 5, verse 1. Last chapter tonight. You guys can do this. We got it. We got good color in the background, good audio. It's a good night. I love the background so much. I think it's so cool. These are the descendants of Reuben. 1 Chronicles chapter 5, verse 1, last chapter. The oldest son of Israel was Reuben, but since he dishonored his father by sleeping with one of his father's concubines, his birthright was given to the sons of his brother Joseph. For this reason, Reuben is not listed in the genealogical records as the firstborn son. Do you see that? Because look at that, sleeping with one of his father's concubine, he lost his name in the genealogies in the Bible. That's pretty profound. Okay, verse 2, 1 Chronicles 5:2. The descendants of Judah became the most powerful tribe and provided a ruler for their nation. But the birthright belonged to Joseph. Verse 3, the sons of Reuben, the oldest son of Israel, or Israel, whatever you want to call it, Israel, were Hanak, Palu, Hezron, and Carmi. The descendants of Yoel were Shemaiah, Gog, which we'll hear about in Ezekiel 38, does a prophecy about Gog, the area, Gog and Magog. It's not the same thing, but Gog comes up. That's the ruler of Russia, basically who that is. Shimei, verse 5, Micah, Rye, Baal, and Bera. Bera was the leader of the Reubenites when they were taken into captivity by King Tiglath Pileser of Assyria. Bera's relatives are listed in the genealogical records by their clans. Jael, the leader, Zechariah. We'll hear more about Zechariah too. Zechariah is a profound prophet, man. There's major and minor prophets. The big ones are just called major prophets. That's all. Zechariah, I believe, is the one I'm thinking of as the dad of John, I think. I can't remember. Anyway, and Bela, son of Azaz, son of Shema, son of Joel, the Reubenites lived in the area that stretches from Orior to Nebo and Baal-Meon. And since they had so many livestock in the land of Gilead, they spread east towards the edge of the desert that stretches to the Euphrates River. During the reign of Saul, remember Saul? Saul that turned to Paul, got his name after King Saul, the one we read about. We're going to hear about Saul that becomes Paul in the book of Acts and elsewhere. John, Acts, actually. We'll hear about him in John chapter 3. He talks to Jesus by night. Remember the how do you get born again, Jesus? We hear about that from Saul before he becomes Paul. During the reign of Saul, the Reubenites defeated the Hagrites in battle. Then they moved into the Hagrite settlements all along the eastern edge of Gilead. These are the descendants of Gad now. Man, the Bible gives you everything. 1 Chronicles 5:11. Next to the Reubenites, the descendants of Gad lived in the land of Bashan, as far east as Selica. Joel was the leader in the land of Bashan, and Shepham was second in command, followed by Jarneh and they almost got me to say Snapchat, and Shaphat. Their relatives, the leaders of the 7 other clans, were Machiel, Meshulam, Sheba, Zerai. I know some people say Sheba. Zerai, Zakan, Zia, and Aber. Verse 14. These were all descendants of Abihail, son of Huri, son of Jorah, son of Gilead, son of Michael, son of Jeshishai, son of Zato, son of Buz. The family of Reuben lost their way through. Yeah, that's right. They did, buddy. Ehai, son of Abdiel, son of Guni, was the leader of their clans. Gunai, whatever. The Gadites lived in the land of Gilead and in Bashan and its villages, and throughout all the pasture lands of Sharon. All of these were listed in the genealogical records during the days of King Jotham of Judah and King Jeroboam of Israel. They're telling you something, you guys. Study these genealogies. I'm telling you. It's not boring like you think it is. Verse 18. There were 44,760 capable warriors in the armies of Reuben, Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh. Ephraim, I told you Manasseh is inherited from Joseph, tribe of Joseph. You need to look up this 44,760 because this is significant. They were also skilled in combat, armed with shields, swords, and bows. My goodness, if I had time. Verse 19, they waged war against the Hagrites, the Jederites, and the Naphishites, and the Nadabites. Nadabites? I don't like that. They cried out to God during the battle, and he answered their prayer because they trusted in him. So the Hagrites and all their allies were defeated. Verse 21, the plunder taken from the Hagrites included 50,000 camels, 250,000 sheep and goats, 2,000 donkeys, and 100,000 captives, people captive. My goodness. Many of the Hagrites were killed, verse 22, in the battle because God was fighting against them. The people of Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh lived in their land until they were taken into exile. Okay, last 4 verses for tonight, guys. The half-tribe of Manasseh. The half-tribe. There's a reason for that. 1 Chronicles 5:23, and we're done after these 6 verses. The half-tribe of Manasseh was very large and spread through the land from Bashan to Baal Hermon, Senir, and Mount Hermon. These were the leaders of their clans: Epher or Aphor, Ishai or Ishi, Eliel or Eliel, Ezrael, Jeremiah or Jeremiah, Hodaviah, whatever, and Jachdiel. These men had a great reputation as mighty warriors and leaders of their clans. Verse 25. But these tribes were unfaithful to God of their ancestors. Remember I talked about people they were passed down from, the direct names of their fathers? And the ones that did listen to David were ancestors leading to David. He's showing you the different lines, like my buddy John said. It's all right here. He shows you Isaac and Jacob, Ishmael and Isaac, how these groups split off. It's right there in the Bible. 1 Chronicles 5:25. But these tribes were unfaithful to God of their ancestors, the God of their ancestors. They worshiped the gods of the nations that God had destroyed. By the way, that's the big G God, that God, our God, destroyed. The little g, they worshiped the gods, the little g, of the nations that the big G God, our God, had destroyed. Our God. Evil clan, that's right. So, last verse tonight, 1 Chronicles 5:26. So the God of Israel caused King Pul of Assyria, also known as Tiglath-Pileser, to invade the land and take away the people of Reuben, Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh as captives. The Assyrians exiled them to Halah, Habor, Hera, and the Gozan River, where they remained